Tonight, the accused CEO killer may be getting ready to head here to New York, perhaps sooner than some expected, as I have exclusive new reporting about who will be representing him when he gets here. Tonight, I can report that Luigi Mangione has retained a high-powered New York defense attorney, Karen Friedman Agnifilo, to represent him as he's facing a second-degree murder charge in the death of the UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson. Viewers of The Source will be very familiar with Friedman Agnifilo, who was recently a CNN legal analyst, but she's also a veteran of the New York criminal justice system. She served as the chief assistant district attorney in the Manhattan DA's office for 7 years before going into private practice. As one longtime New York prosecutor told me tonight, she knows, quote, every corridor, every judge, every clerk in the courthouse here. And she will be taking this case on at a time when investigators have amassed new evidence in recent days, with police telling CNN this week that the 3D printed gun he had on him when he was arrested matches the 3 shell casings that were found at the crime scene in Midtown Manhattan. His fingerprints also match those that investigators found on items near the scene. This is all evidence that Friedman Agnifilo said before she was retained, I should note, could potentially be a problem.
It looks to me like there might be a not guilty by reason of insanity defense that they're going to be thinking about, because the evidence is going to be so overwhelming that he did what he did.
At this hour, Luigi Mangione remains behind bars in Pennsylvania. But just today, we heard from the Manhattan district attorney who said that he could waive extradition, meaning he could be headed here to New York as early as Tuesday. My sources tonight on the breaking news are CNN's chief law enforcement and intelligence analyst and also the former NYPD deputy commissioner, John Miller, retired NYPD captain and author of The Guns of Antwerp, John Monahan, as well as former federal prosecutor and CNN legal analyst Jennifer Rogers. It's great to have you all here, especially on this breaking news that now he has retained a New York attorney. Previously, he had Thomas Dickey in Pennsylvania, who we heard from this week, but everyone was kind of looking to see who was going to be representing him and taking this case on in New York. Tell us what that means as this comes at a time as we're hearing from Alvin Bragg about potentially waiving extradition.
Yeah, well, the extradition piece in Pennsylvania is really a non-event. Most defendants waive it because all it is proving that the guy that New York wants is the guy that Pennsylvania has. It's just an identity thing. There's really no question here when you see all the things that he was arrested with that tie him to the scene of the crime, et cetera. They have the right guy. So really what you want is a lawyer who can take you through the real case, right? The pretrial and, of course, the trial. And Karen is the sort of person with all of her many years of experience as a trial lawyer and in this actual courthouse and in this actual office. That's the sort of person you want.
Yeah, and she does have a wealth of experience in it, as we were talking about what that looks like. I mean, she was about to be intimately familiar with this again, John, because we've been talking, based on your reporting, of just the evidence that they are amassing and what kind of case they're already building behind the scenes.
I mean, they have a gun on him in Pennsylvania, allegedly, that matches to the ballistics at the scene. They have a 3-page letter on him, which the police are describing as a claim of responsibility, where he talks about the what and the why. They have fingerprints that are on his fingers that allegedly match fingerprints that are on a phone discarded at the scene, a water bottle, and a power bar wrapping. So when you get to the elements of a good prosecution, forensic evidence, motive, means, opportunity, as Karen framed in her interview before she was representing him, it's all there. Now, it doesn't mean it can't be challenged. That's what a trial's about.
Yeah, well, and obviously being intimately familiar with that, how will that serve her potentially as in terms, or serve him, I should note, as the client here, as he's going to be, you know, if this delay that they're having with him getting from Pennsylvania to New York is about to be over, you know, what do the next steps in this process look like for him?
Well, they're going to extradite him, and it was just a matter of time. And now it's just a matter of transporting him over there and getting him into the New York City system. I'm just very disappointed that we didn't have a chance. You know, if you notice, there was a delay in charging him when he was first arrested. They didn't level the charges in New York until that evening. That was to give our detectives a chance to get in the box with him and speak with him. Because once you file it, you know this, Jen, once you file an accusatory instrument, the absolute right to counsel attaches. Now, we can't question him without his attorney sitting there. There was a window.
But you could have before.
Oh, yes, that's why we don't charge right away. You look at the timing. Pennsylvania locked him up. They tried to talk to him. He lawyered up. They charged him an hour later. It's exactly how that works. So our guys come in. We didn't charge him right away. Now, he has a right to counsel out of Pennsylvania because they filed charges. We didn't file charges yet. So we want to get an experienced detective in a box with him and see if he'll talk. And if you get a real good experienced detective in that box, this kid, I think, wanted to talk. It's a shame that we missed that window. They must have tried for a few hours because they didn't charge him and file accusatory instrument, which attaches the right to counsel, until that evening. There's a lot we could have gotten. But now for the New York case, you know, like the science didn't catch this guy. We only had partial prints. We had ballistics that matched absolutely nothing because the gun didn't exist. Police worked that photo, the person, that's how they caught this guy. Now that we have a subject, now we can take his prints, match it to the partial. We can take his gun, match it to the ballistics. This is all evidence going forward.
Take his DNA, match it to the DNA.
Right.
Which is what they're doing. But on that note, on that point about being able to have a chance to talk with him, he was initially cooperative, and then later we learned, I think pretty quickly on, he stopped being so. I mean, that could have been incredibly valuable for them.
It is, but you know, the thing that always boggles my mind about this case is why he had all this stuff with him. I mean, in some ways, he obviously was an intelligent kid. He had all of this education, high marks, and so on. He committed this crime. The execution of it showed a lot of planning. You know, he's a sharp kid, and yet he is found in a McDonald's with all of these things on him, right? These papers, the gun. Why he didn't ditch that stuff right away is beyond me. He must have just at some point, once he gets caught, he realizes what's happening. He knows he needs to be quiet. I mean, you don't have to be that smart to realize you need to ask for a lawyer.
And the warrants they're getting now, you know, he was on a laptop when they found him in the McDonald's. He had a phone. As they've been sifting through that, John, where does that stand, one? And two, have they figured out yet who he was on the phone with that day, that morning when we saw him walking to be outside of the Hilton Hotel?
That would be the focus of the search warrant to get into the burner phone. I don't know at what point they either did or failed to get into that phone, but the team that does that is pretty experienced, and that phone's probably easier than most. So don't know that. The warrant to get into the laptop is going to be critical because, you know, as we reported, he was on that laptop in the McDonald's. So you really want to know, what was he doing? Arranging his escape, tracking his next victim, looking at CNN.com to see if, you know, there was reports about either his crimes or that police were closing in. It would be interesting to get in there. The other warrant they did was, and this is counterintuitive, they got a search warrant for Brian Thompson, the victim's hotel room, because at the earliest stage of the case, while they wanted to know this guy in the video, who's he talking to on the phone and who is he, they wanted to know, is there something in Brian Thompson's room, a note, a message that says, you know, meet me downstairs at 644, or a number or a name, and that's what they were trying to do.
Did they find anything from that, from what you've heard?
Nothing of substantive value that I'm aware of that led to the identification of the suspect.
Yeah.
You know, he had all the stuff to prepare for his conference there.
And the other interesting detail today that came from the San Francisco Chronicle is San Francisco police identified the suspect 4 days before he was captured and arrested. They passed that information on to the FBI. Eric Adams on Saturday seemed to indicate that they kind of knew who this was, but obviously it wasn't until a few days later that they actually arrested him. What happens there in terms of police in San Francisco pass along this tip? Obviously, they're getting a lot of stuff, but this was who it was, actually.
Right, and of course, they didn't know that. And they had, as John and I were talking before we came on, they had hundreds of tips similar to that. But this one came from a cop who, as you said, interviewed his mother. Her mother knows her son.
When she filed the missing persons report.
Right. Apparently filed it in San Francisco because that's where he was last seen. Well, I won't say it's shocking, but I understand the way the FBI works in comparison to the way the local police department works. There's a lot of bureaucracy there. Like, if I have something on my case that came up, oh, Jen needs this for her case, I can just lean over and hand it to you. The FBI's got to go 3 flights up, 2 hallways down, 3 flights down. They can't, they have rules of engagement with each other. So that information was properly sent from the FBI San Francisco office to the FBI New York office, and it was being processed. And then we caught him before they alerted us. It's kind of cumbersome. It's a bureaucratic nightmare, but no one ignored it or dropped the ball on it. It was being processed in accordance with their rules.
And it did make its way over to the squad. So it comes out of San Francisco PD Friday. It goes to the San Francisco FBI office. They ship it to the FBI New York office, who does a workup on it on Saturday. Sunday, the NYPD detectives have it. But then it's in the pile of 200 similar leads. And what Eric Adams was talking about was, we don't want to let the person know we know. That was an entirely different suspect who at that time was the top suspect who has since washed out. But that's the nature of these cases. Needles, haystacks, and moments of destiny and luck after a lot of hard work.
Yeah, clearly. Commissioner Captain, Jennifer, great to have you all with your expertise here at the table.